And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. On this week's episode, it's about John McLaughlin, his biography and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about some of his best albums of all time. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. First up, 1973's Birds of Fire. Tracks like One World and Open Country Joy are pure cosmic combustion. Thunderous drums, screaming violin and McLaughlin's double neck guitar tearing through every note. This is fusion at its most dynamic, a musical supernova you can feel in your bones. Next up, we step into 1974's Apocalypse. Produced by the Beatles' George Martin, McLaughlin's band teams up with the London Symphony Orchestra for an epic cinematic adventure. From Power of Love to Vision is a Naked Sword, it's jazz meeting the heavens. Orchestral grandeur meets fire improvisation. Every note is charged with drama, every rhythm a pulse of creation. Fast forward to 1995's After the Rain. Here, McLaughlin joins organ master Joey DeFrancisco and Coltrane's legendary drummer Elvin Jones. The result, a soul-deep, intimate trio sound. Tracks glide smoothly with warmth and meditative beauty, introspective, lyrical and profoundly spiritual. And finally, 2012's Now Hear This. The master is back with the fourth dimension, blending funk, fury and freedom. Complex polyrhythms, lightning-fast runs and grooves that hit like a heartbeat. McLaughlin proves he's still innovating, still fearless, still redefining the future of fusion. From Birds of Fire, and this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. On this week's episode, it's about John McLaughlin, his biography and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about more of his best albums of all time. The first one's called Birds of Fire, released in 1973. Released in 1973, it captured the Mahavishnu Orchestra at their creative peak. 5 virtuosos locked in perfect, furious alignment. The sound is tighter, more confident, and somehow even more dynamic. McLaughlin's compositions stretch the limits of rhythm, melody, and mind. The title track begins with an unmistakable synth guitar unison, a siren call of pure voltage. Open Country Joy flips the switch halfway through. Gentle chords give way to rhythmic chaos. And then there's One Word, a 9-minute marathon where each musician gets their say. The band was under enormous pressure, the chemistry was volatile, but that volatility produced something transcendent. Every solo sounds like a fight for survival. Every rhythm section breaks a declaration of freedom. What made Birds of Fire legendary wasn't just speed, it was precision. The control inside the chaos. McLaughlin's double neck guitar becomes a symbol, the human reaching forward through the divine through sheer will and discipline. So it's not a relaxing record, it's a revelation, a spiritual storm. 1 year later, McLaughlin did something nobody expected. Instead of trying to rebuild the Mahavishnu sound, he expanded it way beyond. Apocalypse was produced by none other than George Martin, the Beatles' studio magician. The Mahavishnu Orchestra joins forces with the London Symphony Orchestra, creating one of the most ambitious hybrids in jazz history. The album opens with Power of Love, a soaring suite where orchestral strings collide with jazz rhythm, with rock energy and spiritual devotion. Then there's Vision is a Naked Sword, a 14-minute epic that feels like a film soundtrack for creation itself. This wasn't fusion, it was symphonic transcendence. McLaughlin, by now deep into his spiritual path with Sir Chinmoy, wanted to merge East and West, electricity and eternity. So he composed with the discipline of a classical maestro, but still soloed like a man chasing infinity. You can sense George Martin's hand in the lushness, the clarity, the mix breathes. And when you hear Jean-Luc Ponty's violin soar against the orchestra, it's like watching the sun burst through clouds. Apocalypse didn't sound like the first Mahavishnu albums, it was too complex, too demanding, but it laid the groundwork for fusion's orchestral ambitions for decades to come. If Birds of Fire was a storm, Apocalypse was the rainbow afterwards. Now fast forward 20 years to the 90s. Fusion had come and gone, the guitars got louder, the tempos got faster, but McLaughlin was once again walking a quieter road. In 1995, he recorded After the Rain, a trio album with 2 absolute legends, Joey DeFrancisco on organ, Elvin Jones, the heartbeat of John Coltrane's classic quartet, on drums. Gone are the multiple time signatures and walls of sound. Here it's all space, warmth and conversation. The title track, a Coltrane composition, becomes almost autobiographical. McLaughlin revisiting the spiritual terrain of his youth, but this time with tenderness instead of fire. Take the Coltrane swings with effortless charm, while My Favorite Things turns nostalgia into meditation. McLaughlin's tone is clear, almost vocal. You can hear the years of reflection in every note. And Joey DeFrancisco's Hammond organ wraps around him like a halo, while Elvin Jones propels the music with that rolling thunder that he made famous with Coltrane. And finally, the modern McLaughlin, the eternal innovator. In 2012, he released Now Hear This. Even the title tells you something, that play on words, now here and nowhere. It's philosophical, yes, but also funky. With his group The Fourth Dimension, Gary Husband on keys and drums, Etienne Bape on bass, and Ranjit Backrot on drums and Konanakal, McLaughlin built a unit that sounds like fusion reborn. The opener, Transfusion, sets the tone, dizzying polyrhythms and grooves that twist in impossible shapes. But amid the technical wizardry, there's heart. Tracks like Echoes from Then and Not Here Not There shimmer with melody, a kind of nostalgic wisdom. You can tell McLaughlin's enjoying himself here, relaxed but razor sharp. The guitar tone is clean and digital but expressive, almost liquid. What makes Now Hear This so special is how it reunites every era of McLaughlin's music. The rhythm, the intensity of Mahavishnu, the melodic subtlety of Shakti, and the warmth of After the Rain. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. On this week's episode, it's about John McLaughlin, his biography, and best hits. Now it's time for some trendy music news. On Friday, November 7th, the Michel Brangwyn Dance and Music Ensemble presents Creatures of Sound, an original work that celebrates the connection between dance, music, and the human spirit. The show pays tribute to Don Cherry, the visionary trumpeter who believed music could unite the world. Inspired by his fearless creativity, Creatures of Sound combines original music by Grammy-nominated Tim Higgins with spontaneous movement and live improvisation from 10 incredible artists. Expect a full-on sensory experience, part concert, part ritual, where dancers and musicians share the same space, creating art in real time. It's a living dialogue about unity, love, and imagination, featuring Angela Wang on voice, Michael Eaton on sax, Evan Hyde on drums, and a lot more. That's Creatures of Sound, Friday, November 7th at the Mark Morris Dance Center, Brooklyn. Art meets soul, movement meets meaning. And that was some trendy music news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. We're going for a short break, we'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about more of John McLaughlin's best albums of all time. Stay tuned. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. On this week's episode, it's about John McLaughlin, his biography, and best hits. During this hour, we're going to talk about more of his best albums of all time. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. First up, Extrapolation, released in 1969. Before the Mahavishnu fireworks, there was this British jazz gem. Young McLaughlin, already restless, painting time signatures and tone with pure imagination. It's raw, brilliant, and you can hear the storm that's about to come. Next up, Belo Horizonte, released in 1981. McLaughlin dives into his melodic side, mixing French fusion with Latin color. It's elegant, electric, and packed with emotional phrasing. Think jazz sophistication meets Mediterranean sunshine. Then The Heart of Things, released in 1997. Back on electric guitar with a vengeance. This one's dark, deep, and funky, a groove-driven fusion workout with Dennis Chambers pounding the drums like a heartbeat from another planet. And finally, Is That So, released in 2020. John teams up with Zakir Hussain and Shankar Mahadevan for a serene, meditative fusion of jazz and Indian classical. It's not about speed, it's about soul. From Extrapolation to Is That So, McLaughlin's fusion flame never fades. And that was some insight into what's coming up during this hour, and you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update to Jashan. On this week's episode, it's about John McLaughlin, his biography, and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about more of his best albums of all time. The first one's called Extrapolation, released in 1969. Before the Mahavishnu fireworks, before the world even knew his name, there was Extrapolation. Recorded in London, this was John McLaughlin's debut as a bandleader, a young Brit with an untamed imagination, a hollow body guitar, and a head full of daring ideas. The album opens with the title track, and right away you hear something unusual for late 60s jazz, a sense of angular phrasing, of controlled chaos. McLaughlin's saxophonist John Sermon weave lines around each other like two birds in flight. This is post-bop with an electric undercurrent, tight, cerebral, and years ahead of its time. You can hear McLaughlin already pushing against the walls of the genre, experimenting with odd meters and modal shifts that would later define his fusion work. The tracks It's Funny and Arjun's Bag reveal a young guitarist already fluent in multiple languages. Blues, jazz, Indian rhythm, European harmony, all colliding in elegant precision. What's beautiful about Extrapolation is its clarity of intent. There's no flash, no distortion, just pure tone and razor-sharp thinking. This album didn't make McLaughlin a star, but it set the foundation. It showed the world a musician who wasn't chasing trends, he was building his own universe. Fast forward to 1981, and McLaughlin is a world traveler. After Mahavishnu and Shakti, he's lived several musical lives, and Belo Horizonte, released in 1981, captures a rare, luminous chapter in that journey. Recorded in France, this album is both elegant and exploratory, a blend of jazz, Latin, and European classical sensibilities. It's McLaughlin's love letter to melody. Gone are the fiery solos and spiritual battles. Here, the guitar sings, glides, and breathes. On Belo Horizonte, John trades power for poetry. The album features an ensemble of French musicians, and you can feel that continental lightness in the playing. A lyrical, almost cinematic touch. David and very early homage to Bill Evans show a side of McLaughlin that's introspective, refined, and deeply human. There's also a sense of warmth throughout the record, a sunshine chord, and maybe inspired by the album's title. Belo Horizonte means beautiful horizon, and that's exactly what it sounds like. The horizon after the storm. It's fusion, yes, but not the electric whirlwind of Mahavishnu. This is fusion as art, textures of synth, delicate acoustic passages, and rhythms that sway instead of groove. Many fans overlook this period, but it's pivotal. This was McLaughlin finding balance between virtuosity and vulnerability, between East and West, between his mind and his heart. By the mid-90s, McLaughlin had already seen the rise and fall of multiple eras, fusion, new age, digital jazz, but in 1997, he proved the fire still burned hot with The Heart of Things. This album is a return to form, but with a darker, funkier edge. Back on electric guitar, McLaughlin sounds more fearless than ever. And when you've got Dennis Chambers on drums, Matthew Garrison on bass, and Gary Thomas on sax, you know you're in for a storm. From the opening track, Acid Jazz, the groove is deep, urban and pulsing. There's a street-wide confidence in these tones, jazz fusion reborn in a modern world. The heart of things is in nostalgia, it's evolution. McLaughlin embraces digital tones and hard-edged funk while still carving out space for his signature modal explorations. What stands out here is his maturity as a band leader. He's not dominating the sound, he's conversing. The music breathes, builds, and then breaks apart like a living organism. Half a century later, John McLaughlin releases Is That So in 2020, and the contrast couldn't be greater. Gone is the flash, the distortion, the transcendence. Here McLaughlin has already arrived. Teaming up with two of his lifelong collaborators, tabla master Zakir Hussain and vocalist Shankar Mahadevan, McLaughlin crafts an experience of stillness and devotion. Using synthesized orchestral textures and clean guitar tones, the trio build vast emotional landscapes. Mahadevan's voice flows like liquid light. It's as if all his years of searching, all his musical experiments finally lead to this, the quiet center of sound itself. There's a spiritual weight to Is That So, but it's never heavy. Instead, it feels weightless, like floating across a sunrise. It's fusion at its most ethereal, not of styles but of souls. So from 1969's extrapolation to 2020's Is That So, we've spent 50 years of innovation and seen a man evolve from a hungry young guitarist in London clubs to a global visionary of music and spirit. Each album marks a chapter, the experiment, extrapolation, the elegance below horizontal, the energy, the heart of things, and the enlightenment Is That So. Together, they form not just a discography but a philosophy. McLaughlin once said music is a language of the soul. Across every fret, every fusion, every fearless leap, he's proven it to be true. On this week's show, it's all about the biography and best hits of John McLaughlin. We've come to an end of this week's episode of the Jazz Updates, and now for a quick recap of what we discussed on today's show. Born in 1942 in Doncaster in England, John grew up on blues and jazz records. By the late 60s, he was shaking up London's jazz scene with his lightning technique and fearless ideas. Then came a phone call that would change his life from none other than Miles Davis. McLaughlin plugged into Miles' groundbreaking sessions on In a Silent Way and Bitches Brew, and just like that, jazz fusion was born. His playing was like electricity in human form, wild, searching, and full of energy. Next up, the Mahavishnu Orchestra. With the inner mounting flame and birds of fire, McLaughlin led a group that sounded like a supernova, mixing Indian rhythms, rock distortion, and jazz precision. In the mid-1970s, he formed Shakti, blending his guitar with the tablas and violins of Indian classical music. Albums like Shakti with John McLaughlin gave fusion a spiritual core, one heartbeat between East and West. Then came Electric Guitarist in 1978, where he reunited with jazz titans like Chick Corea and Billy Coben, and the fire returned full voltage. And of course, who can forget Friday Night in San Francisco? McLaughlin, Al Di Meola, and Paco de Lucio, three acoustic maestros turning the stage into a thunderstorm of melody. Through every phrase, McLaughlin's message stayed the same: music as a search for truth. From the inner mounting flame to Shakti to Friday Night in San Francisco, John McLaughlin didn't just play the guitar, he reimagined it. And that was a quick recap of what we discussed on this week's episode of the Weekend Jazz Update with Shakti Silva. That brings me to an end of this week's episode of the program. Don't forget, you can check out the archives of today's show on my YouTube channel, The Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan. I'll see you again next week. Have a great week ahead.